Rockruff anyway. So if you're already playing the Bloodthirsty Eyes Lycanroc, now you have this extra option in your list as well. As we start seeing the prize cards for Bert there, he has prized his one Nihiligo GX, which could actually end up copying something like a Lycanroc's GX attack for one-hit KOs. That option no longer available to him unless he's able to take it out of his prize cards.
And the deck also only runs 5 lightning energy, and I think I saw 3 in the discard pile. Sorry, in the prizes, yeah, which means that he might be at a bit of a difficulty to find those energy. Of course, you know, having that Tapu Koko Prism Star able to get energy back from the discard pile when he needs to, but might be a bit difficult to find them early in the game. I mean, there is that option to go to Rainbow Energy, but putting a damage counter on your Pokemon is never really ideal, and you probably want to save that for other Pokemon that don't attack for lightning energy.
Yeah, you want to save those Rainbow Energies for the likes of your Buzzwole GX, your non-GX Buzzwole, as well as that 10 damage can actually be really relevant if Henry's trying to evolve up his Pokemon and leave no easy targets. It can be one less bench Pokemon that he has to commit with a Riotous Beating, so a lot of awkward prizes. Bert also only plays one Volkner, so maybe finding energy is going to be a bit difficult for him. As we do kick off this game, Henry starting off with the Tapu Lele GX, not quite ideal for him, but he is at very least able to find himself 3 Zorua on this first turn, which is pretty ideal for most Zoroark-based builds. Yeah,
I mean, that's an incredible start. I'm not sure if he searched for Professor Elms and then put it off to the side, or just decided to get 3 Zoro from deck. I'm not sure that's a legal play, but yeah, of course, found a supporter to get himself those 3 basic Pokemon with 60 HP or less. And here, I think is where Bert's going to start to... well, he actually has 1 Lightning in hand, and so
that's nice.
That might be the only one he sees for a little while, which is a little bit awkward, but I'm sure once he plays Ultra Ball and searches his deck, he'll realize very quickly what he has access to.
They're going to toss away 1 Electro Power, so Thunderous Assault currently looking at 110 damage. It's not out of his range to get a one-hit KO this turn if the Cynthia's kind enough.
I'm very surprised to not see a turn 1 Guzma with the Zapdos. I feel like that's something we've been seeing sort of all weekend with people chipping off basics on their opponent's bench with a Guzma and a Thunderous Assault combination. I'm sure that's something that Henry wouldn't have liked to see either, as his strategy is definitely to get multiple Zoroark GX into play and start digging through his deck and finding those combo pieces.
Oh my goodness, Bert's hit himself Choice Band and a second Electro Power. That's such a huge hit from Bert. Able to burst an extra 90 damage this turn out of nowhere. 2 prizes on turn 1, whilst also being able to Cynthia into Jirachi and another supporter next turn. That's incredible tempo from him.
Yeah, and this is what we've been seeing all weekend. I mean, Zapdos just out of nowhere, just dealing so much damage. And it's all because of that Electro Power card that came out with a Team Up. You know, you can add another 120 damage on your turn, add that with Choice Band, that's a free 150 damage on a GX, and that's not something you ever want to see when you've got a Tapu Lele down.
170. Wow, turn 1, going second. That's just for 1 energy on a non-GX Pokemon. Not even hitting for weakness, that's just incredible. Henry is opting to go for the Cynthia now. No guaranteed Zoroark just yet, or double Colorless Energy. He also needs to find basic Pokemon. He needs to find a lot here if he's going to find any sort of response. He does have a Timer Ball that he can fire off here.
But if he is able to get a Zoroark GX and enough basic Pokemon in play, and that double Colorless Energy, Bert might be in an awkward position having to try to find that Lightning Energy like we were talking about. That's the only drawback I can see in Bert's sort of system at the moment, but it doesn't look like there's any evolution Pokemon coming out from Henry.
That's really awkward. Let's see if Bert has himself any guaranteed switching cards.
Another Lightning.
Another Lightning Energy. He's just...
Where are they coming from?
He's got a switch as well, so there's going to be no respite here. He just wants to guarantee that he can retreat and attack with the Zapdos. So he's going to play the switch and then Lily after the fact, so that he can just use that escape board to freely retreat out of his own Absol and take a 3rd prize of this game unchallenged right now. And this is where you can already see the power of the Zapdos deck. It is so fast and efficient at taking prize cards. 1 misstep and you fall very, very far behind, like Henry has done here.
And this could be definitely a reason, as we were alluding to earlier, about why Stage 2 decks have sort of fallen to the wayside, because these Zapdos are able to just knock out those basic Pokemon so quickly, the opponent doesn't have time to play Rare Candy and get their GX Pokemon. Looks like Henry's going to scoop up that game, recognizing he's a little bit too far behind, unfortunately.
And I really like the early scoop from Henry. So often you can see people battling through games when there's not much, basically very low % chances that they're going to continue and win. Henry knows that Zoroark, Lycanroc, when it starts working well, the turns go long because you're trading so often. You have a lot of decisions to make in the games. You need to have time, and you can see 45 minutes still on the clock. That's plenty of time for him to take 2 games against Bert and swing it all around.
Yeah, and there's something quite important to mention in this matchup. Yes, Henry is running fighting types in those Lycanrocs, but they're not so great when you're facing against Zapdos. It doesn't happen to be actually weak to fighting types. It is one of those lightning Pokemon in this format, unlike Pikachu and Zekrom tag team, that can actually resist a Lycanroc GX. It's not so threatened by it because of that resistance to fighting. So, I mean, how does this matchup go necessarily? Do you think Henry has the edge, or do you think Bert should take it?
I think Henry going first this game, his priority has to be going for Grimer and Ditto. These are the bigger tech cards in this matchup. Bert is so focused on using his Jirachi engine to pull out all these key cards, more switching cards, more Guzmas, more aggression. But as soon as a Muck hits the field, it really does become very slow, the Zapdos build. Bert is playing one copy of Zebstrika and one copy of Blitzel. So he has somewhat of a safeguard against the Alolan Muck, but it is still such a pain if all your Jirachis are taken out of relevancy and just become dead spaces on your board, basically.
Yeah, we definitely had a masterclass in Jirachi. Oh my goodness, there are 3 Jirachis in the prize card. Speak of the amazing card itself. So he does like to prize 3 copies of things, Bert, make life difficult for himself. But yeah, yesterday we definitely had a masterclass in Jirachi. A lot of people playing switches and escape ropes. Henry actually disclosed to me earlier that when he's playing against things that run a lot, different basic Pokemon, he really likes to take advantage of Giratina's Distortion Door to try to take multiple prizes in one turn, especially if the opponent's using, like that baby Boswell, to prevent it from using Sledgehammer and getting 2 prizes. So he's very, very well versed in this kind of matchup, and he's very experienced with the Zoroark GX, Lycanroc GX deck. But yeah, being on the back foot straight away is going to put a little bit of pressure on him, possibly a bit of stage nerves as well.
It would be really interesting to see if he does hit maybe a Zapdos for 100 damage and then use Bloodthirsty Eyes, Distortion Door, and then knock out like a second Zapdos in the same turn to jump over a Sledgehammer. There was no sign of it in the first game because he conceded so early. Maybe that's the only question mark you could give him for conceding early. He didn't get the full information of Bert's deck. He doesn't know that there's Rainbow Energies that he has to play around just yet. As far as he's concerned, he's just seen Lightning Energies and no other tech Pokemon other than Zapdos. So he may not naturally be playing around Sledgehammer other than the fact that he just has it as an option if he can get away with it.
Prize is a little bit more conservative for Henry. Not too much there that he should be worried about. Possibly something like a double colorless energy. You don't necessarily want to see those prizes. You definitely want to have access to energy when you can. But looks like he's got the ideal Professor Elms without having to use a Tapu Lele GX.
Yeah, 2 in a row. Not too bad for him. He's eyeing up that Ditto Prism Star straight away. I think this is the biggest concern about going towards an Elm-based Zoroark build. Many people think it's so easy for a Zapdos player to simply Guzma your 1 Ditto, and obviously Grimer having 80 hit points is not a valid target for Professor Elm. That's why we've seen many more people sort of lean towards a Lily Nestball-based build. But here, he's also going to be able to Pokemon Communication away a Rockruff, and he's still found himself a means of getting Grimer and Ditto Prism Star down. This is exactly what he needs to do here if he's going to start making Bert's hands a lot more clunky by shutting off Jirachis.
Yeah, it's a really clever play getting down the Ditto Prism Star and the Alolan Grimer. Pretty much ensures that he'll be able to get out an Alolan Muck next turn and use that ability to shut off the Jirachis, like you were saying, and the Absol as well as another card in Bert's deck that is a basic with an ability. Yeah, kind of saying, okay, Bert, do what you need to do, take your prizes with your Zapdos, but I'm going to be able to shut you off next turn. So it's really kind of putting the pressure on Bert here to be able to chain a few attacks on the Ditto and perhaps the Grimer in succession.
And Bert seeing the Grimer Ditto, he's straight away looking for his Blitzel, and it is in there. He's already holding on to Zebstrika as well in his hand, so he wants to make sure that he can be still functioning, even though he doesn't have his Jirachis available to him. There's 1 in his prize cards, so... there's 1 in his deck, 3 in his prize cards, so he would have to be going for the Zebstrika line regardless, just based on what he's prized. But going for this very early is a keen identification from him, knowing what he needs to do in this matchup. It's one thing that the European builds, a.k.a. Bert and Robin, they're playing the Rainbow Energies and the Zebstrika, whereas the sort of more American build that we've seen from many of the players in our day 2, they're just playing Jirachis and Zapdos and nothing else.
Oh, and there's that turn 1 Guzma with the Zapdos combination. You just see it every single game with these decks. They seem to always have that Guzma in hand. And yes, he was able to get one of those Jirachis off the prize cards, which is a very nice thing to see, I think, at this point in the game.
We'll see Henry. He's got at least a Tapu Lele GX. I think we're going to see once again. Last game, he had the turn 1 Elm, and into Cynthia, they got him not too much. Here we're seeing him Wonder Tag once again, and I think it might just be, Cynthia, please grab me some Zoroarks, because once again, he's in need of a lot here.
And unfortunately, Tapu Lele GX, not something that Henry would probably have wanted to bench. Bert, yes, well, we did actually see last game he was able to take a one-hit knockout on a Tapu Lele pretty much out of nowhere. But also he does run that card Shrine of Punishment, which does put 1 damage counter on each of your opponents, or all Pokemon in play that are Pokemon GX. And it just means that if Bert is able to find that Shrine of Punishment, it kind of puts that Tapu Lele GX a bit on a timer, or just makes it much, much easier for Zapdos to knock out.
Yeah, it's certainly not comfortable, but Henry having to put it into play. We have seen an Alolan Muck, but it looks like there's no Zoroark in his hand here, so it's another slightly slower turn. The Alolan Muck is definitely going to be helpful, but no Zoroarks again from Henry. Very, very awkward. Yeah. Missing all of his timables and Pokemon communications. That's rough.
I'm not really convinced. Does he play Zoroark GX? We haven't really seen it yet. There comes down that Zeb Striker, though, with its very, very, very useful ability, that sprint ability, and it looks like Bert's sort of doing things in the right order here. He's going to search his deck, get the pieces that he needs, and then use Sprint to be able to discard his hand and draw 4 cards and hopefully find more pieces. Yeah,
once again, he can use this Volkner now to guarantee himself any item card. In this case, he needs to use a switch to move his Zapdos out of the active position so that he can get the main benefit of his benched Zapdos using Thunderous Assault to take another prize card. And again, the Zapdos deck's so efficient in taking early prizes, especially against evolving decks. He doesn't want to miss a beat here. He wants to guarantee these with his Volkner, and he has the option to continue his turn with a sprint if he wishes, depending on how good the rest of the hand is.
Yeah, and if he happens to, it looks like he didn't have the escape board to be able to put down the Jirachi and switch and then retreat. But I don't think you need to. Taking knockouts on Zaruas is pretty much the game plan. If you can streamline those, you're in a very, very good position. Looks like he's going to use sprint and discard his hand, and it's sort of a whole lot of nothing, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not too great for him. Henry needs a big, sort of incredible tempo swing if he's going to deal with a Zeb Striker for next turn, so Bert can still feel fairly confident with this. It's going to require a lot from Henry, especially with no Rockruff on his board. He's most likely going to have to use a drawing supporter if he has one, but again, I think he's just looking at Guzma and not much else to draw with here.
Yeah, I see a Rescue Stretcher that could get him back the Zorua if he's very keen to keep those Zoroark, that Zoroark GX possibility alive, and it does look like he plays that to get that back down on the bench. But yeah, Guzma looks like it might be the only supporter. I believe that might be a Mallow as well.
Yeah, it looks like Mallow to me as well.
A little bit hard to discern these full art supporters sometimes.
It needs to be Mallow. It's going to be most likely just Zoroark on top. And then another Zoroark after it, possibly, or just a draw supporter after that. Maybe he's looking at Erica's Hospitality. That seems to be what he needs to go for here. Very, very slow stuff from Henry. It's interesting to see him being one of the few Zoroark players who has made it into this day 2 and at such a high standing right now, and yet he's still sticking with the Elm engine. It feels like pre-team up, Elm was definitely the king of Zoroark variants, and as soon as all these Zapdos players came out, it felt like many people were jumping off the Elm bandwagon. And here, he's been able to get those Elms every turn. It's just been the follow-up that he's failed on so far.
Yeah, I mean, Henry's been playing Zoroark with Lycanroc for a very, very long time. Even when maybe it was a questionable choice at tournaments, he would always be there, and he would always really represent it well. So it could just be also a comfort pick. He might be used to playing Elms to find those basic Pokemon and decide not to deviate too much from that.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's nothing better than having a deck. You know that your 60 cards inside and out already. So why just... When you're coming up against newer archetypes, some people may not have quite figured out the optimal 60 cards yet. Yeah. You just know that you have your favorite 60, and you can play it inside and out. Why would you make any changes? Bert's going to go ahead, Ultra Balling away a Jirachi and a Nihilego, finding himself Buzzwole. Now that he is down to 4 prize cards, he's going to put an extra spanner in the works towards Henry here.
It makes me wonder if he's able to couple that with something like Guzma, but unfortunately those cards aren't available to him. Just to get rid of that power of alchemy.
Yeah, just for pre-sprint, I think.
Ideal. But yeah, and again, a hand of some nice pieces, but no draw supporters that he'd like to see for this turn or next. Down comes the Shrine, and that's going to put a clock on the Tapu Lele GX if Henry can't find a way to bounce that Stadium card or replace it.
We do see Bert pay retreat alongside his escape board, so he can take a knockout with his Zapdos and, keep energy on his Zapdos as well in the back. Smart play from Bert. He has had to sprint away his Dance of the Ancients, Tapu Koko, Prism Star. It seems to me that he's just going to let Muck be on the board for the majority of the game by seeing him not even wanting to bench this. The Mallow does mean that there's a Zoroark on top, and we know that he can trade into Erica's Hospitality as well now. He's already got himself double colorless energy in hand.
Looks like there might be some deliberation about whether trade goes through, but a lot of them definitely does not shut off trade, so that should be okay.
I think it's just the Shrine of Punishment that was the concern here.
1 damage counter on that Tapu Lele GX.
And if there was a Zoroark in play last turn, he would be happy to see it. He wouldn't mind. But
so this is a little order of operations sort of thing here. He's able to trade into the Erika's Hospitality that he put on top of the deck with the Mallow. It's a nice little combination that Zoroark GX can achieve. Helps players draw. It looks like Henry's got a little bit of something going on, so he will be able to at least attack this turn. I see a few more basics, so potentially get a knockout on this Zapdos, which only has 100 HP left.
Yeah, definitely a lot of Pokemon sat in his hand right now. He does have a Giratina. It looks like no more Zoroarks again for him. They have just been hiding from him all day from the looks of things. He's got Acerola for next turn, so if Bert is unable to find a Guzma, which, you know, currently his hand is not getting him there, there might be some respite for Henry. But thanks to that Rainbow Energy damage, Riotous Beating right now is enough, thanks to just Rockruff being put into play. Yeah,
I really do like that Acerola that Henry's running. It's really great against his decks. It sometimes can't achieve a one-hit knockout on these big GX Pokemon. You know, Zapdos, yes, of course, it can, out of nowhere, have this choice band, quadruple electro power turns that, you know, take these knockouts, but that's not the ordinary situation. So Acerola gives you another chance to survive.
It looks like Bert did miss the Guzma off of his sprint there. So we are just going to see the Cynthia. He could still reach quite a lot thanks to Beast Energy that's in his deck. And Shrine of Punishment ticking over as well would put the Zoroark at 10 hit points remaining.
Including the Shrine?
With the Shrine, it would put it down to 190, and he could go for 180 with Choice Band, Beast Energy.
A lot of math. Doesn't look like he hit it, though.
No, no
Beast Energy there.
That means he can't even use a Zapdos Thunderous Assault this turn. This could be the opening that Henry's been looking for.
A little way to come back, but that Buzzwole on the bench is certainly very threatening, though.
Yes.
If Henry's able to take a knockout, he's just walking straight into a Sledgehammer for a knockout, so it's a little bit awkward.
Even when you're taking the Buzzwole out, because there's rescue stretches in Bert's build, it's going to be very awkward for him. And Henry is playing the Devoured Field, so he can hit 130 on Buzzwole if he needs to. There's always the Lycanroc GX attack as well, potentially available if he wants to go down that route. He is playing multi-switch in his build.
Yeah, that is one thing about Zoroark GX. It just has so many options available to it. It can play so many utility cards and really get these great combos out of nowhere.
Oh, it looked like Bert. So Bert must have drawn the Cynthia for turn, and now he's sprinting, but still whiffing energy cards.
And they're not even prized. That was last game. What's happening?
No, still missing. So it could just be a Thunderous Assault for 10 here.
So he's going to play the Escape Rope.
Here's one way to go about it. He has Rope Switch.
Henry's got to decide here, what's he going to put up as a possibly a sacrificial Pokemon?
I think if he's brave, it would be Tapu Lele here. The awkward thing about bringing up Alolan Muck is you don't really want to Acerola this because it, you know, is some relief for Bert. The Muck won't be on for a turn, and it opens up the door for a future Guzma.
And it's massive retreat cost as well. Makes it very awkward to get out of the active position unless you're going to be playing Guzma or switches or escape ropes of your own.
He does play one copy of Switch in his list, Henry, so maybe he's holding on to Switch in hand.
Unfortunately, it's just a 110 on that.
There was one Electro Power used on the on Bert's last turn, pre-sprint, I believe. Henry is going to be... Well, he's drawn into a Zoroark, so he has a second one available to him. I know he does have the multi-switch in hand. He has Lycanroc available. If he is going to be taking a prize this turn, it has to be on the Buzzwole, or he has to try and set up some strange Giratina play by not taking a knockout this turn, maybe just hit the active for 100, and then try and go for a Distortion Door play, plus a Gusting effect. Maybe knocking out the Zeb Striker and a Zapdos in the same turn would be huge for him. And he's traded into Switch, which is huge.
Yeah, that Buzzwole's just a little bit too threatening, really. I mean, you just can't comfortably take prizes on anything else while that Buzzwole's sitting there. And, you know, we know that Bert plays, and I'm sure Henry's aware that he plays things like Rainbow Energy, Beast Energy. That's enough to just get a knockout on the Zoroark GX. And if Bert goes down to one prize, he's a little bit too far ahead, I think, at that point.
That's for sure. The Buzzwole does just keep you pushing onwards against the Zoroark. As we saw, Bert missed a knockout this turn, and it's kind of getting back into the favor of Zoroark players. But now, with the Giratina potentially using Distortion Door, could be a way around this.
Eyes onto that Buzzwole, so it will bring the Buzzwole up into the active spot, and there's a switch as well from Henry.
This is only really ever punished by a Beast Energy exactly for a Sledgehammer knockout when you're not taking the knockout, or if Henry's looking to use maybe a Professor Kukui or a... oh, sorry, not Professor Kukui, using the Devoured Field this turn to just knock out the Buzzwole, but it does open up Bert to find Rescue Stretcher.
Yeah, second trade will find him an Ultra Ball, at which point he's able to find a basic if he does have another one in his deck. So he will be able to deal 120. So as you said, he will need that Devoured Field to be able to get a knockout on this turn, but he might actually just be going for 120 damage and use that Distortion Door.
I mean, it's only punished by exactly one card in Bert's list, and many of the Rainbow-based builds don't play Beast Energy either, so maybe it's just out of his range at the moment. Henry may not even been thinking about it.
Yeah, it's sort of safe to assume that that Beast Energy isn't in there. So there we go with 120 damage onto that Buzzwole.
Puts down Tapu Lele simply to have 120 damage.
He's decided not to search his deck.
Well, he can't search his deck because
of
the
course,
lower muck.
It's hampering himself.
Yeah.
And lots of spread damage with that Shrine of Punishment. The longer that stays in play,
There's
the
Rainbow
sort of worse
Energy.
it's going to be for Henry there. Bert does options to play his hand down, though. He can play that Nest Ball and then go into a Lily. He also has the Sprint available to him.
So drawing into a Rainbow is a little awkward, because if he was able to find Beast Energy this turn, and then Henry tries to take a knockout on the Buzzwole next turn by not using something like Giratina, as well as taking a second prize, he could then use the Rainbow Energy again and use Sledgehammer all over again. So we might see Bert use something like the Nest Ball here now, just to thin an extra card if there aren't any more in his deck. It looks like there's one Jirachi that he could pick out if he wants to, and then use the Lily before the Sprint. The big disadvantage of doing this is that you could just draw into more Rainbow Energies and stuff and still be whiffing on your Beast Energy. It would still open up the door for gusting effects, though. If he sprinted first as well, he has options for Guzma. So it's a difficult decision for Bert here, whether to sprint first or use Lily.
Looks like he'll use sprint to discard that Lily and the Rainbow Energy. Going to draw 4. Still doesn't find Beast Energy, but finds a few other interesting pieces that he can definitely use, such as that Electro Power and possibly the Guzma as well.
Guzma's not too shabby at all. I think if the Alolan Muck is still in play, Henry can't use Distortion Door. So if Bert is going to be using Guzma, it actually should not be on the Alolan Muck here, because it would open up Henry to get around Sledgehammer.
Here comes down the Electro Power, just to add another 30 damage.
Yep,
it's going to target the Tapu Lele GX. I mean, it won't be a knockout, but it will be pretty close with Shrine of Punishment.
Yeah.
And it does mean that Tapu Lele will go down in a couple of...
One Electro Power played.
And it will go down in a couple of turns. Bert's just saying, no, only one Electro Power. This isn't like the first game.
Henry just assuming. We need to get... Yeah.
A couple of Shrine damage goes across. Yeah, the Shrine player is always aware. They're always annoyingly saying, no, now I spread damage on you. So that Tapu Lele now in 160 means that if it's still on the field, if it's not Acerolled this turn or Max Potioned, then it will go down to the Shrine of Punishment. I mean, Henry has the opportunity to bounce that with a Devoured Field.
Henry starting to begin his term of trading. He is already holding on to Acerola, so that's not a huge headache. It's just the fact that he's not able to be healing his Zoroarks is, again, just very awkward for him. Alolan Muck's stopping him using Distortion Door to get around Sledgehammer as well. It's all just a little bit awkward for him right now.
And it's very well played by Bert as well. I think he's recognizing what kind of strategies Henry's going for. I mean, he could have targeted that Alolan Muck and said, oh, now I get to use Stellar Wish, but then he'd be opening himself up to having multiple Pokemon potentially knocked out in one turn. So. And
Henry can't Acerola and Guzma in the same turn, so Henry will Acerola off Tapu Lele and guarantee Bert a Sledgehammer attack, as long as he's able to find another Rainbow Energy and just knock out whatever he chooses. So
there comes the Acerola. That's going to clear the Tapu Lele of all of its damage. I mean, you had to do it, right? You had to prevent Bert from taking those 2 prizes on that Tapu Lele, but decides to promote the Tapu Lele GX from the bench and to commit a double colorless energy to it.
I think in this situation, he's just kind of hoping that Bert's sprinting into the wrong stuff and not having answers to retreat his own Zapdos.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like a desperation play. Definitely not plan A at this point.
He's in a rough spot, to be honest. Maybe he's hoping that Bert is going to maybe deal with a lower muck for him or something like that, if he is in a bad spot. But currently not holding on to any switch cards. And again, he's got the decision, do I Lily or do I sprint first? I think in this case, just requiring switching cards. He's already got a choice band committed to his Zapdos. It may be best... Well, it looks like he's eyeing up the Lily. He does play a lot of switch cards, so I can't argue with him for this.
And you can definitely see the value of this Zeb Striker now. I mean, most builds just have that reliance on the Jirachi with its Stellar Wish ability. Because Bert has that Zeb Striker with the Sprint ability, you know, he's fine in this matchup. He can keep going and keep drawing different cards. Finds the Beast Energy, but I'm not seeing any kind of switch effects.
No, he may be having to attach another basic energy to his Zapdos and pay retreat again if he wants to continue using Thunderous Assault, or he could forgo the Thunderous Assault, or even just go with the active. That's also an option, just peppering these up. He's pretty content that Sledgehammer's just there for him when he wants to. Just say, Henry, you've got to keep healing. I'm not going to go anywhere. Yeah. Please go down to 4 prize cards for me.
I mean, he knows that Henry's already played his Ace of Roller. He does have 2, but that's 1 down, so not too many options to clear damage from the board at this point.
Henry's really got to start finding his devoured fields. This Shrine of Punishment has put in so much work this entire game. Look at the amount of damage counters that it's put on. For a stadium, that is just ridiculous.
Well, Trade's going to help him try to find those cards. It does mean he gets to see 4 extra cards this turn, and we see the new Lycanroc GX in his hand, but it's not really going to be doing anything this time.
No, this isn't the matchup for the new team-up Lycanroc GX. It's a much stronger card against Pikachu and Zekrom Tag Team GX because its own GX attack only requires 1 fighting energy card, similar to how we saw Stefan Ivanov play the Lucario GX just to have a 1 attachment answer to a Pikachu and Zekrom. This is how Henry's tried to do the same thing.
It doesn't seem like he's found the devoured field either, which is incredibly awkward. It just means that the math is so much easier for all these Zapdos to just take knockouts on these 2 prize Pokemon. And Bert is only down to 3 prizes, so you know that's just a knockout on 1 GX and potentially that Alolan Muck that only needs 10, which is really 10 or 20? 10.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore. Now it needs its full damage.
He's going to get rid of his Alolan Muck, and here comes Distortion Door. He's going to get around Sledgehammer this way, it looks like. He's going to take the knockout on the Buzzwole, slap one on the Zapdos as well. Smart play to put it on the Zapdos, in my opinion, because, again, he's going to be limiting his own bench size. If Bert's able to take 2 more prize cards, he doesn't want to put down any other basic Pokemon that are in range. He wants to force Bert to take, essentially, a 7-prize game.
And that could only have been a better turn if he could have found the devoured field. That was a very insightful play by Henry to clear that Muck. And now, would you say he'd potentially put the Grimer back down, or is that just a free prize to give away to Bert?
I think it's too risky to put down a Alolan Grimer at this point. He may opt to go for it and have to take a risk because he is fairly behind right now. But it still feels like an awkward play for him.
Once he attacks, he will go even in prize cards, so they will both be on 3 because of that Distortion Door taking a Buzzwole from the bench, and Henry able to take a prize off that. But you just look at all the Shrine damage building up, and you look at the Electro powers that Bert has available to him, and it's...
And I don't see a double Colorless Energy in Henry's hand, so maybe like retreating out of the Tapu Lele into a Zoroark, that still feels pretty awkward. Instead, he's going to opt to attach Fighting Energy to his Lycanroc GX and simply have to announce Energy Drive to finish off this Zapdos in a 2-hit fashion, but immediately throwing up his Jirachi. It's his first chance to use Stellar Wish in the whole series.
Finally gets to it. But as I said, Zebstrike has been putting in work with that sprint. It's really been the extra Jirachi that isn't a basic that Bert needs in this case. It looks like there's a lot of pieces in his hand. Able to attach to Jirachi.
Attach to his Jirachi. Might be content to just Thunderous Assault. Why not?
I mean, yeah, at this point you're getting a knockout. So he will go down to 1 prize, and there's a whole lot of damage on Henry's side of the field that Bert can exploit later in the game.
Yeah, and Rightus Beating is doing poor numbers now. He's thinking, Henry, you've got to bench some basics if you want to get a Rightus Beating response knockout here. And that falls prey to just losing to Guzma, which is already in Bert's hand.
But even Dangerous Rogue GX is not actually getting a knockout at the moment because Zapdos is resistant to fighting.
Yeah, he's essentially forcing Henry to find Professor Kukui this turn, which is really awkward as well because he wants to be using all sorts of other
There's the field
cards.
Finally bounced, so it's smaller respite for Henry there, but perhaps a little bit too late in the game.
And if you're forcing Henry to use Professor Kukui just for damage, it means he can't get judged as well. And Bert's sitting on a really good hand with Guzma energy already in there. It would be 1 Stellar Wish or sprint into Rescue Stretcher, and it's just game.
So Henry does have access to Judge, and he also has access to Professor Kukui, so both those lines of play are available to him. He would actually have to commit another energy or a counter gain to that Lycanroc GX to be able to attack this turn.
I think he's missing on double Colorless Energies again. Henry's had an awful, awful day at the office, missing Zoroarks early and missing double Colorless Energies late. This has been so rough for him.
And there comes down the Judge, so he's opting perhaps not to get the knockout on this Zapdos, and instead deciding, I'm going to play Judge, I'm going to disrupt my opponent's hand, putting it, just a couple of damage counters away from being knocked out, but certainly not in range of that Giratina Distortion Door, and Henry does only run one, so that play has now been done. And
I was just checking if there was any Diancie Prism Star. That's not in his deck list either, so he's definitely not going to be able to take a knockout here, thanks to that crucial resistance of Zapdos.
Loving what Bert's drawn into a Rescue Stretcher, Electro Power. I think there was a Guzma.
Let's see if Bert has the answers to close out this game. There's some heavily damaged GX Pokemon around. There's a Rescue Stretcher, as well as a potential option if he wants to get another Zapdos into play.
I mean, he has
energy.
He has an Electro Power and a way to switch. So he can deal 110 damage to anything on any GX on Henry's... Actually, any Pokemon on Henry's bench there.
He could just Rescue Stretcher for Zapdos, attach Guzma, Electro Power, bring up the most heavily damaged Zoroark, and sprint and try and find the likes of Choice Band to push him over.
Or another Electro Power.
Yeah, that's got to be his line here. I think it's very strong.
He does get Rescue Stretcher for a Zapdos. Can commit energy to that. He's going to play Electro Power.
Yeah, I think he's just making sure he goes through the motions here. If it's ever safer just to maybe hit into the active Pokemon, thinking that Radius Beating's never a problem for him, as long as he has Guzmas remaining.
He does have a couple of turns left as well. Again, he's only giving up one prize per turn. So Henry does actually have to, at a minimum, take 3 turns to win the game. So Bert could play a little bit more conservatively here.
I like Bert taking a moment here. He's counting his own deck. He's seeing the outs in Henry's discard pile. How many Acerolas been played? Is there a Max Potion or a Pal Pad in the discard pile? Make sure he knows his outs. This might be Bert's final Guzma. He has used a lot this game, and this might be the only reason why he's being a bit hesitant here. Saying, if this is my last Guzma and Henry can just heal for the rest of the game, this could be my only lost condition. But he is going to go for the Guzma, so we'll definitely be seeing a sprint for potentially game here.
There we go, Ultra Ball in the discard pile.
Shrine will help. Nice.
Shrine will add a little bit of damage to all different Pokemon. So even if Henry's able to heal 1 or 2 per turn, there'll still be damage adding up. Also prevents Zoroark from potentially getting a knockout as well, as it won't get that extra 10 damage on any Pokemon from Radius Beating attacks that it can perform. And there we see
that Zoroark is putting him on the clock.
Very heavily damaged.
He has to get healed this turn, or a Counter Stadium at the very least.
That's 200 damage on there, so it is 10 away.
Yes. Yeah, he's on literally this turn to heal or bounce Stadium. Probably got to be the heal, to be honest. But I'm not sure how many Guzmas Bert has left. This might be the only question mark for him.
That's the last trade for Henry there. Plays Kukui. I don't think he found anything.
That's not a Counter Stadium.
A lot of cards in hand, but none of them help, unfortunately. So that's the game. It will go over to Bert Wolters. We'll take the series 2-0.
Very impressive stuff from Bert. I really think his list is much more heavily prepared for a Zoroark player. We saw earlier yesterday Isaiah Williams and John Eng, they were playing, and when John was able to get his Alolan Muck down against Isaiah was basically scooping already because he couldn't do anything. Bert still able to sprint through his deck, such a huge deal, and the Sledgehammer Buzzwole, even though it didn't use Sledgehammer this game, it forced Henry into so many awkward